What's up, guys? Welcome to G Whiskey. My name is Jeff. Now, this is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. If that sounds interesting, hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, why don't we jump into our review? Today, we're looking at the Glenmorangie Lasanta. Stick around. Okay, so we're looking at another Glenmorangie today. We've got the 12-year-old Lasanta with us. Super common whiskey. You can probably find this stuff at basically any whiskey shop anywhere in the world. Top seller for sure. And I think most people with at least a little bit of history with single malts behind them might have tried this one out before. This one's going to be their sherried expression. I think a lot of you out there are probably familiar with the Glenmorangie core range. I think it's a great concept. What they've done is they've released a series of finished whiskeys that I think are great for beginners because they showcase the kinds of flavors that get imparted by a certain type of cask. Obviously, as I said, this one's our sherried one. We also have the Quinta Ruben, which is our port finish, and the Neck Dog, which is our Sauternes finish. All three of them basically finished variants of the regular 10-year-old. And again, I think these are great for beginners, people who are just getting started. But the question is, are they still good for those of us with a little bit more experience? Obviously, that's going to depend on personal taste, but historically, I haven't been the biggest fan of the Glenmorangie core range. While I respect what they do, they have a series of very palatable, very accessible whiskeys that serve as an introduction to a style. But in my mind, they've always been a little bit simple and one-dimensional. Hot take, I know, but I've always felt that way, even about our Lasanta here. I had the Lasanta a few times very early on in my whiskey journey, and after that, I never really looked back. In fact, this will be the first bottle that I've had since well before they rebranded back in 2017 or 18. So it has been a while, and I wasn't sure how I'd feel coming back to this one, but you know, even when we have a little bit more experience under our belt, it is nice to come back to some of those nostalgic bottles, those back to basic bottles. There's a lot of bottles like that where we can still enjoy. So why don't we find out if our Lasanta is one of them? Why don't we hop into our review? And in the meantime, if you could kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So Glenmorangie is not consistent with their specs, and unfortunately we've got one of the weaker ones here. Our ABV comes in at 43%, and you know, way back in the day, this one used to be a 46% whiskey, although I believe it was also no age stated at the time, so tradesies, I guess. This one's also going to be chill filtered and colored. Alright, so we have an unnatural color to our whiskey here. We have the classic Glenmorangie bottle shape, which I think looks good. I think red is a natural fit for sherry. I think the label looks good. I do prefer this presentation to the older version, which I believe had a darker color scheme. Wasn't a huge fan of that one. I think it's a good look. It's not a great look, it's not amazing, but it does look good. So presentation will be 3.5 out of 5. Obviously nothing about color or chill filtration. We do have some really basic production info here. We have aged in bourbon barrels, finished in hand-selected sherry casks. Hand-selected, obviously meaningless. We do have a little blurb on the back. Doesn't tell us very much. Honestly, not great for info, but we do have all the basics here, and the bottle looks good on the shelf. As a general rule, I do not add water to 43% whiskeys. Let's try our nose. Okay, a sweet, bright, clean sherry. Creamy. Cinnamon, caramel here, toffee, some mocha, some butterscotch, orange zest, marmalade, Lyle's golden syrup, almonds, oak, and peppercorn. This fits the sherried profile to a T. It's good. Let's try our palate. Okay, sweet and creamy again. Getting a lot of candied fruits like candied strawberries, candied apples, candied cherries, almonds, a lot of brown sugar, some dates, and some cinnamon. Now we're finished. Okay, so we have a little bit of like musty oak in here. That almond note gets a little bit more bitter, which kind of counters that rush of sugar we get on the arrival. This is a short finish with lingering nuts and indistinct fruit. So we have some good and some bad things in here. It's certainly not a perfect whiskey, but that doesn't mean that I don't like it or that it's bad. Let's start with the good. I really like that slightly kind of creamy element we get with the sherry in here. I like how easy this stuff is to sip. It's something you can sip and enjoy very casually. I mentioned in the tasting notes that this fits the sherry profile to a T, and it really does. These are sherried flavors. If you want to know what sherried flavors are, this is the introduction. However, it is kind of superficial. Listen, we get all the elements that we'd expect from a standard sherried whiskey in here. The flavors are clean, they're clear, they're sweet, but honestly, I think they're a little bit too sweet. I like sherried whiskeys. I don't mind a bit of sweetness most of the time, but that big hit of candied, sugary fruits that we get up front on the arrival is a bit much for me. So if you're sensitive to particularly sweet whiskeys, this one might not be for you. I do feel like that sweetness is kind of covering up how simple this whiskey is. Once you take in a lot of those sweeter, louder sherried elements, there's really not a lot to explore behind any of that. This one starts and ends with loud sherried flavors. We don't get any hint of the distillate in here, which I guess makes sense. Glenmorangie is a very delicate distillate. But yeah, there's no quirks or interesting, creative, or unexpected flavors in here. The only flavors we have are the ones that are just completely spelled out for us by the casks. Now, I do realize this is an introductory whiskey, and we shouldn't expect a masterpiece. And I think it works as an introduction. Personally, I don't really feel the need to come back to this whiskey. I think the low ABV, the overly sweet and simple character, and the lack of anything truly interesting beneath the surface means that this is, overall, I guess, a satisfying, but ultimately superficial experience. And I still don't hate it. This whiskey is going to be an 82 for me. I think it's perfectly fine for what it's trying to be. I realize this sounds snobby, but I think people who are deep enough into whiskey might still be able to enjoy this casually, but I doubt they'll find it very engaging. At least that's the case for me. And it's funny, I was talking about how I love my sherried whiskey, so you just assumed that I would have a sweet tooth, and I mean, I guess I do, but yeah, this one's just too far for me. It's too sweet. I won't be coming back to this bottle anytime soon. But then that begs the question, who is this for? I mentioned earlier, this one's gonna be great for beginners, and that's true. But I guess this could also work as like a casual dessert dram, a simple after dinner sipper. It would totally work in that context. So if that's something that sounds appealing to you, absolutely check this one out. But aside from that, honestly, I'm not gonna recommend this one. I think there are better entry-level sherried whiskeys for the price, and that'll bring us to value. So our value here is fine, I guess. It's certainly not an expensive whiskey, and I'm not going to suggest they drop the price or anything like that. The price is reasonable, but I do think there are better whiskeys out there for the money. I would recommend something like Glenmorangie 12 or maybe Bunnahabhain 12 if you want a good quality sherried whiskey. Obviously, prices aren't going to be the same across the board, but those 3 bottles are the same price in my market, and honestly, this one just can't hold up. Again, I think it works as a dessert dram, but I think there are a lot of more complex, craft-presented whiskeys out there for about the same amount, and yeah, I would suggest skipping this one in favor of something a little bit more interesting. Okay, that's it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, always appreciated. Now, I do want to hear from you. Have you tried our Glenmorangie Lasanta here? What were your thoughts? And finally, down in the comments below, let me know what you want to see me review next. I'll keep that in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.